What up, what up? WINBUSH here, and today I'm excited to show you guys a brand new way of rendering in Unreal Engine version 4.25. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. This is something that's brand new in version 4.25. This is a new way to render it out. This program is becoming more friendly for broadcast artists and VFX artists like myself. So if I jump into Unreal here, this is my sequencer, and in versions of the past, you usually had to click on this clipboard, and then this brings up your render movie settings. So this is the traditional way that we're used to doing it. But with this new version 4.25, we can actually go up to Window, Cinematics. So this item right here called the movie render queue, click on this, and now we have this box opened up here. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is come up to this green button here, select this where it says render, and then you're just going to click on whatever shot you want to render out. The cool thing about this is you can actually queue up a couple of different shots. So say that you had some shots that you want to render out separately. This is where you would queue everything up at, but I just have the one for this example. So to get into our settings here, you go to settings where it says unsave config. Let's click this. This is going to bring up another box. Now the output, this is going to be what we render out. So if I go up to settings, go down to output down here, you can see we have the different type of image sequences. So we have the BMP, the EXR, the PNG, and then we can also export audio. I noticed that they don't have a QuickTime ProRes in there, but this is beta right now, so I hope they would bring that out at some point. But the cool thing is with the PNG or the EXR, if I click on this, you can actually output an alpha channel. You can actually output an alpha channel as long as you don't have anything that's obscuring in the background. So that means no skylights, no HDRI domes or anything of that nature. It has to be clean in our background here. And then moving on, if we come down here, we have an option for anti-aliasing, in which you can override it to your typical gaming anti-aliasings here. But I know inside the document, it was saying that you probably want to keep it on none. You don't want to really override it because this, like I said, is still in beta. So these might not give you desired results. And I noticed too, for a spatial count or a temporal count, if I raise it up, let's say like 4, I get this warning down here. And I don't know, it just, whenever I was rendering out, I just kept everything at 1. Actually, I didn't even use anti-aliasing yet, and it still came out pretty clean. But the option's there if you want to mess around with it. And then we have an option for burn-in, which if you have a burn-in set up for your video, this is where you would select and set that up at. So you can override your camera settings in here. If you want, you have access to the shutter speed. You can control the manual exposure. Then we have console variables, which let me pull up the actual documentation for this one, because there was some, and I'll actually leave a link up below for where you can find this at. But this is for ray tracing. So these are the different commands that you could put in there to control your ray tracing for your sequence if you want to do some manual overriding. And so you would click on console variable, click the plus button, and then it comes up with this console here. And then you would just go and take one of these commands and set this up. And like I said, I'll leave this documentation down there for you if you want to read more in depth on what these are. But these, you can just copy and paste these and put these in here if you want to go that deep into it. Let me click settings again, come under game overrides. So this is where you would override your modes in here if you wanted to do so. But we're going to be mostly just rendering out cinematics and motion graphics and stuff of that nature. So I would just leave everything at default here. Really don't need to mess with anything in here. And then high resolution. So this is interesting too. So now we have access to doing like really high resolution renders, and it's actually going to tile. Like if we're working in Cinema 4D, how we have the tiles, we can actually do that now. We have access to that here. So if I pull up the documentation again, you can see how it's kind of setting it up. So this is setting it up for 4 tiles, and this example is for a scene that's going to be 7680 by 4320. And it's going to split it up into 4 tiles. And if I look inside the documentation, it says the high resolution settings allow you to tile renders to produce larger images, as I was saying, that you would normally not be possible due to the maximum texture size or limitations of your GPUs. And so if you do want to do something extremely large like this resolution here, now you're able to do that. So for our tile count, if we want to match this here, we could say like, okay, 4 tiles. Then it comes up with this disclaimer down here. So just make sure you read down here. Like it tells you that if you do use this, you can't use like the bloom effects and some screen effects. So that would be in your post processing and things of that nature. So use this discretionally. And then this right here, the UI render. So this is for so deferred render is just going to be your normal render. It's going to have your alpha channels embedded in your image sequence. But the UI render, this is going to split it up into two different sequences. And so you'll have your matte layer if you want to use a matte for compositing later. And so you'll get like your straight image, and then you'll get a matte image, and then you'll just be able to comp those in whatever you want to comp it in. And then that's about it. And so you have your output down here as well. You have your same file format. It's very similar to how we did it before. So you have your naming structure here. This is where you set up your resolution, and then you can still set up like your handle count. So if you want to have it, you know, stop for, or if you wanted to have it start after a certain amount of frames, just to kind of warm up your particle sequences or things of that nature, you still have access to that here. Then one last thing, if you come up to presets, you can actually set up some presets for yourself. So if you found a setting that you use over and over again, you have access to that to be able to save your preset out, so you don't have to keep setting it up time after time. If you find a setting that works for you, why not set up a preset for yourself? And that's going to about do it for the render movie queue here. Exit this out. Like I said, you can set up several shots in here, and then you can render locally, which I do. But then we have this render remote, which is for setting up on a render farm, to my understanding. So if you have like a whole bunch of renders in here that you need to get done, you could distribute that maybe through like Deadline or something of that nature, and have that render across your network. I would just suggest that you stay with the render local here. This is what I've been using, and you know, this is still in beta. I know I said it several times, but I just wanted to really strike down to the point that everything in here is not going to be perfect yet. So it's going to take some experimenting, but I definitely like the way that this is set up. If I do it side by side, I definitely like the way this window is set up compared to this window here. I mean, it just looks like it's a little bit sleeker. It's a little bit better to understand. And I definitely like the direction that Unreal's going with this. So I hope they keep improving on this. And I would definitely love to see some like crypto mats or things of that nature, so we can really start getting in compositing. Like I use After Effects, something like crypto mats or even just like puzzle mats would really help us out. But this is a great start. So hopefully this helped you guys out. I really like the direction that Epic is taking with this movie queue. I think it's a lot more robust than the old way of doing it. And plus we can render out with alpha channels, which is a big plus. So if you did find this helpful, make sure you leave me a comment down below. As always, give me a big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you already aren't. And as always, stay fresh, keep creating, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.